Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate on the day after the biggest bomb blast to hit Nigeria's capital. At least 75 killed, the toll expected to go up. We're discussing how to handle Boko Haram. We're talking about with Nigerian political consultant Emmanuel Iga. We're also talking about with French political consultant Emmanuel DUPUY of the Institute for Prospective Studies and Security in Europe. Louis Magloire Kemayou of the Paris's African Information Club, which brings together journalists, but not only journalists.
Yes.
And joining us from Washington, former U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, John Campbell, who is with the Council on Foreign Relations. Welcome back to all of you, gentlemen. We were talking just before the break. Emmanuel Iga was talking about what Boko Haram wants, what they want is unclear. Do you agree with that, Emmanuel DUPUY, that their agenda is unclear?
I think the agenda is, clearer on my point of view, is that disturbing any political solution which would put them out of the system. They want to be a part of the system and they want to disturb the system. But again, they entered clandestinity in 2009 when their leader was killed, captured and killed. And I think what the important picture here is saying that terrorist organization followed an agenda, but it's not on the same track as we are following it. The agenda that Boko Haram is following is an agenda of putting radical Islam everywhere, not only in Nigeria, but in the outskirts of Nigeria. This is why there are links with Mujao in Mali, and there was tentatives of links with other terrorist organizations. That's one point. And therefore, the Nigerian government is handling a dual strategy, stick and carrots. On one hand, doing counter-terrorist operation, counter-insurgency, as the ambassador calls it. But on the other hand, it has a clear agenda, which is to isolate the most radicals inside Boko Haram. Inside Boko Haram, it's a movement in which you have a lot of people not following the only agenda of the leader, Abubakar Shakau. So the strategy that the federal government is trying to isolate the more radicals and opening a debate, just like the Americans have been trying to do with the Taliban.
But when they shoot, for instance, all of the inmates at a prison, as they did recently, that's
exactly what I'm saying. Isolate the more radicals in order to reintegrate.
It makes the government more unpopular when they do that.
Well, the government has a problem of tackling the violence. It's not only about terrorism, it's tackling the violence against the insurgency, against anyone jeopardizing security, not only terrorist organization. Again, the strategy which has been applied during the last month is a dual strategy. On one hand, we try to negotiate, and on the other hand, we do very harsh and very heavy operation. Of course, we have to have in mind that there will normally be a tentative of liberating the scholars who have been captured. But again, there has been an open dialogue. Some in the political federal in the federal capital has said that maybe one of the issue would be to increase.
Human rights groups are saying that
it's a civil war.
The troops are overreacted there, and they
Amnesty International wrote this a few days ago.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, some are saying maybe we could open the debate and discussion in widening the Sharia. You know, the Sharia is only applied in 9 northern federal states. Maybe that can be the first step to discussion, maybe to open it to other states.
All right, a lot of reactions coming in. One on Facebook from Johnny. Most of the Boko Haram members are non-Nigerians, and the weapons they use are not made in Nigeria. John Campbell, your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things. I do think that most of the weapons that are used in Nigeria are taken they're either stolen from government armories or they're bought on the street. Nigeria is awash with weapons. It's not hard to find them. I'd like to return for just a moment to what I think is a crucial question, and that is, what does Boko Haram want? I agree with previous speakers that there are many different strains to Boko Haram. Shakau's is one, but it's only one, which makes it very difficult to generalize. Further, there's no sort of 12-point manifesto or sort of plan that Boko Haram has out there. But what we can look at is Boko Haram rhetoric. The rhetoric particularly that appears in videos that Shekau issues, periodic statements, and then there is a record of sermons that Shekau preached in the principal mosque in Maiduguri before 2009. If you look at this body altogether, what it looks like they're saying they want to do is create the kingdom of God on earth by bringing justice to the poor through the rigid application of Sharia law. Now, I would submit that this is not a political program. This is a kind of religious or other aspiration. And that's one of the things that makes it so very difficult to deal with. I mean, how do you talk to these people? Further, how do you identify people who actually have authority to talk? There have been a couple of previous efforts made by the government to open negotiations. And what happened in one or two highly distressing cases, what happened was that the alleged Boko Haram representative was murdered the following day by his own fellows. So I think we're dealing with something which is new, which is pretty unique, which does indeed have deep roots in a long period of misgovernment and marginalization in the North. And I certainly agree with previous speakers to the effect that the boundaries in the North are extremely fluid, and therefore it's easy enough for Boko Haram operatives to duck across the border if it gets too hot in one particular place.
And what are your thoughts on the state of emergency being lifted?
I don't really see how that would be possible. If the state of emergency is lifted, or more to the point, if the security forces are withdrawn, presumably the various Boko Haram groups will simply march in. On the other hand, it's difficult to see how elections can take place in 2015 in states where a state of emergency is in place. And as all of those states, the three states, have huge Muslim majorities, if the elections in 2015 are conducted, in part at least, on the basis of religious and ethnic identity, and if you exclude three Muslim states, it becomes highly likely that the Christian candidate will win. What that would do is further deepen the sense of marginalization and isolation in the North that feeds Boko Haram.
All right. With or without the state of emergency, some say it's not going to change much in those areas. People who lament the heavy-handed approach not working, say many Nigerians.
It was after the state of emergency that we saw school pupils that were slaughtered in their sleep. It was after the state of emergency that a whole barrack was besieged and attacked and almost taken over by these insurgents. They drive in convoys, they don't move in one cars. So it is the activities are in the open, and it is clear that the military cannot contain them. Because if the entirety of the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Air Force, Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Police cannot contain a small insurgent such as Boko Haram, it shows the inefficacy of our military system.
And someone acquiescing on Facebook, York, saying the government is supposed to tighten security around the areas which are suspected that Boko Haram will target, like universities and boarding schools. Nigeria's military has egg on its face.
Well, if you go to the northern part of Nigeria today, I don't think there is any road that you can move on more than 5-7 kilometers without finding a military checkpoint. And in the cities is the same thing. From every street junction to another one, you have checkpoints all over the place. And what they are doing is just doing their best. They try to look into the vehicles as they pass. It causes a lot of inconvenience to people in the traffic because it slows down the traffic. So it's to say the best is being done currently. There are checkpoints everywhere. And the problem is that when you have a well-organized Boko Haram as a logistic, like we have seen in action yesterday. Somebody puts heavy explosives in a vehicle, camouflages it very well. It's still possible to move around and not get caught by the checkpoints. So that's a big problem. Now, for the heavy-handed approach, military approach that we are seeing, I don't think the government has any choice. We have to take on large groups of Boko Haram insurgents that are actually identified. Their locations are identified at the border areas. And when that is done, generally, the military just has to swoop in and deal with them. The problem is what a friend Kumayo was talking about earlier on. It's easy for them, and the ambassador mentioned it, to dock into the other side of the border and take cover there. So what we are looking for now is an increased cooperation amongst all the states in the region: Niger Republic, Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria, and on to the other parts of the Sahel. Because what we are seeing now is movement of troops, let me say, Boko Haram fighters, okay, moving from one part of the Sahel to the other. When the fire gets too hot for them in Mali, they cross over to Nigeria and other parts of the Sahel. So this is where we're having problem. We need an increased military cooperation amongst the countries.
Tumayu, like me, I'm sure you've covered many of these ECOWAS summits and African Union summits where these kinds of calls reverberate loudly. Do you see this happening anytime soon? Real, genuine cooperation, cross-border cooperation?
It will take a certain time to become real.
Is there a hint that it's about to happen?
No, the fact is that any country has a national agenda. And sometimes it's difficult because of some personal issues to take into consideration. The general security comes by cooperating each other, transbordering cooperation. And I also want to mention that Boko Haram has been prospering because it's a monster politics have boiled in Nigeria. They were playing with it and they are not able to control it anymore. And that is the fact now. Because at the beginning they used to play with it and say we are how can I say it? We are now disturbing the politics in the federal states in Abuja, but the fact is it is not only Abuja. How can I say it again in French? It is not only an Abuja's issue; it's a national issue now, and we should consider we are all concerned by the issue of security in Nigeria, but very widely again in Africa. Because if we only consider it as a Nigerian problem, it's the first mistake. Because the 9/11 attempt, when we looked after it, we said it was a world issue. Let's consider it a world issue in Nigeria and in all the states in Africa where we have terrorism, that we should fight it and forget about human rights concerning those fighters.
Which brings us back to the point that Ambassador Campbell made a short while ago, and I want to put it to you, Emmanuel Iga. What if we're in a situation next year where you cannot have a vote in the Northeast? Goodluck Jonathan is re-elected, a Christian from the Southeast, and that creates a lot of resentment.
Well, I think what Goodluck Jonathan is going to try to do is, come what may, election will be made to hold in all parts of the Federation.
Do you see places like Borno State having elections?
I think I believe election will hold in all the states of the Federation, one way or the other. That if it doesn't, then that is the best way to surrender to Boko Haram. That means they've won. And because their objective is to make this election impossible. That's one of the objectives, as we have been saying. I believe there wouldn't be this kind of resentment as we have been told. Nigeria's politics is organized in such a way that in practically each of the political parties, the Muslims are as well represented as the Christians. Now, what is happening is that we have Goodluck Jonathan, who is a Christian president, trying to get reelected as the Constitution allows him to do for a second term, which is the last one. And we have a Muslim vice president. This is how it always goes. Before Goodluck Jonathan, there was Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, late today, who was a Muslim president, and Goodluck Jonathan was his Christian vice president, his vice president. So it's always gone like that. It's an unwritten thing in the Constitution, but it functions like that in most of the political parties. So I don't think that's where we're going to have problems.
John Campbell, your prediction on how next year's elections will go?
Well, I think there are a number of different options. The first is I can imagine the elections might be postponed, particularly if the fighting heats up. There's provision in the Constitution for postponing elections if the country is in a state of war. And it could be argued that the conflict with Boko Haram is a state of war. Second, if the elections do go forward, the government has said they will be held in all the states of the Federation. The question becomes how meaningful this could be, particularly with Boko Haram doing everything it can to disrupt them. I would note that there were local government elections in Yobe earlier this year, an area where Boko Haram operates, and the turnout was less than 8%. If the elections are held on time, and if fighting and insecurity continues to be the theme that it is now, and in fact spreading across the North, then I think there is a danger of increased Northern alienation. I would also point out that over the past several months, we have been seeing more and more appeals to ethnic and religious identity in campaigning that is going on, particularly at the local level. In a country that's 50% Muslim, 50% Christian, and with more than 350 different ethnic groups, that's playing with fire.
Emmanuel Iga, have you sensed that as well?
That has always been a constant parameter in Nigerian politics, that politicians appeal to their ethnic people, that politicians appeal also to their religious groups too, so it's not really something that is going to change this time, and I don't think that.
But it's always a dangerous game in Nigeria. We saw the violence in the Middle Belt a while back. We saw religious zealots, by the way, not just Muslim, there are also Christian ones too. It's a dangerous game.
Yeah, I think Nigerians are used to that. I think that is not going to be the main issue. It's not going to be the main issue. We have a situation whereby certain parties are going to have Muslim presidential candidates. Of course, for the ruling party, I think PDP is going to have Jonathan trying to come back. And so we will have, across the board, sufficient Muslim candidates and sufficient Christian candidates for people not really to feel marginalized because of their religions or even because of their ethnic groups.
Emmanuel DUPUY?
Well, I would, of course, share that, but I would add that terrorism is not the only problem that the next president will have to tackle. You've mentioned that Nigeria is the biggest economy. It is the biggest African country, population of 170 million inhabitants. Some say it will be, by 2050, the third most populated country in the world. So demography is something you have to tackle. And of course, there is a narrative. The narrative which has been used by this government is saying that Boko Haram was weak. Now we have to see if there will be ongoing attacks. We have to see how the population will react and how the campaigns saying that Boko Haram is not only made of Nigerians, as one of your participants mentioned it, will have an effect. I'm saying this because we already lived this with the Afghan elections. Everyone was saying the Afghan elections will not take place. They took place. Everyone was saying there will be huge insecurity, jeopardizing and not allowing the people to go and cast a vote. They went to the vote. So now it's just about political willingness. We have 1 year to show that this government is capable with the sustain of the international community, because Nigeria wants to be a model. Nigeria wants to show to the world that it is facing huge challenges, but it can be the most, again, powerful and the most economical powerful country in the
All right,
horizon.
so picking up on that.
And of course, fighting for the roots which allow the ungovernance of the North, which is corruption. And this is the main subject you have to tackle. Nigeria is considered to be one of the most, not to say the most corrupted country in Africa. So if you find an issue to that, and this was true in Algeria, this was true in Mali, then you prevent the terrorists to be legitimate when they try to replace what the state cannot do, which is provide security.
That's right. And the issue of the Nigeria leapfrogging South Africa as the continent's largest economy has, of course, been in the headlines a lot over the past week. It's thanks to a new way of crunching the numbers. They say, by the way, Nigeria's size of the pie could even be bigger if you counted the informal sector. What was your reaction when you saw that new data and that Nigeria had leapfrogged South Africa?
No, the fact is, it's the first partner now in economics with lots of African countries, especially starting by banking. You have lots of Nigerian banks in Southern Africa. In Cameroon, in Benin, in Mali. You have lots of Nigerian banks now created in those countries. You have lots of partners in those countries, in Benin, in Niger, in Chad, in Cameroon. Nigeria is the first economic partner before France. And that can really become a hope for Africans to build better links between themselves and help to increase this trans-African trading we are calling for the next years.
All right, so lots of positives, but, and I'll put it to you, John Campbell, back in February, we also got news, speaking of financials, that Lamido Sanusi was sacked as central bank governor. This after he blew the whistle on missing oil revenue and fiscal mismanagement. Just how much do you think, Ambassador Campbell, that the Nigerian government, the incumbents, can paint themselves as models going into that election next year?
Well, I think that's going to be very difficult. What the firing of Lamido Sanusi, and it looks to me like it was almost entirely for domestic political reasons, whatever the government's justification. What the firing of Lamido Sanusi undercuts is the independence of the central bank. And having an independent central bank is, I think, of crucial importance. We were talking a few minutes ago about the fact that there is now an argument that Nigeria's GDP is larger than that of South Africa. I would say maybe, maybe not. It depends on how strong you think the statistics are. But I would point out that there's plenty of statistical evidence that, in fact, the number of poor people in Nigeria, both those that live on less than $1 a day and those that live on less than $2 a day, is growing. What that tells me is that an increasing part of the Nigerian economy is essentially going to a very small elite at the top. And that does not promote, over the long term, political and social stability.
All right, and it's on that thought that will leave you one comment from one of the viewers, Michael, saying Nigeria's government should tackle unemployment and poverty in the country. So there we go, the campaign issue set here in the France 24 debate. I want to thank Emmanuel Iga for being with us. I want to thank Louis Magloire-Kemayou, Emmanuel Dupuy, and John Campbell for joining us from Washington. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Thank you.